Imagine a world where one person's economic decisions can affect millions of people around the world. Elon Musk is an entrepreneur whose success depends on innovation and strategic moves. But what happens when his actions in politics and economics have disastrous consequences for his most successful company? We all know how Tesla is changing the world of the auto industry, but today we're going to talk about how unexpected political and economic decisions began to crumble the empires Musk had spent years building. It all started when the US, under President Trump's leadership, implemented stiff tariffs on goods from China and Europe. But surprisingly, not only did these decisions affect American manufacturers, but they were also sensitively received abroad. Canadian authorities, seeing a threat to their economy, responded by imposing high tariffs on Tesla cars. This was the catalyst for an economic crisis that involved not only Tesla, but other market players as well. How did these tariffs affect Tesla's prices and sales in Canada? And how did it ultimately affect the entire company?
Well, when you look at the kind of input Musk has been having into politics, there has been some polling done which suggests there is a strong dissatisfaction with Elon Musk's views on weighing into very much national politics, national elections in Europe. And then on top of that, when you see the backdrop of Tesla upgrading its product line and the impact of them trying to chase more sales at the back end of last year, that means it's short on inventory. It can't necessarily sell as many vehicles or doesn't have as many in stock to sell. So there is that issue there of a confluence of impacts, which means that sales have been falling. Again, the question is how much more that will impact into February as well, given that the back end of last year, in 2024, Tesla sales did slip overall.
But this isn't just a story of declining sales. It's the struggle for survival of one of the most ambitious businesses of our time in the face of growing global instability. That's when Tesla's stock began to fall, and the situation became far more complicated than anyone could have expected. Musk found himself at the center of a tumultuous wave of protests and discontent, especially in countries that have been hit by trade sanctions, including Canada and Europe. Interestingly, many believe that it was his support for Trump's policies and involvement in political games that led to these consequences for his company. But what happens next? Can Musk turn this situation around? Or is this the beginning of the end for Tesla on the international stage? Can the company recover from these economic blows, or is there a much bigger threat coming from competitors and disgruntled consumers? These questions worry not only investors but all those who follow the fate of Tesla. After all, the stakes here are huge, not just for Musk himself, but for the entire auto industry.
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
In today's video, we'll dive into the details how raising tariffs, a seemingly minor decision, has had a devastating impact on the business of one of the most influential entrepreneurs of our time. We'll also discuss how global markets have reacted to these changes and what we can expect from Tesla in the future. Be prepared for some unexpected twists and turns. Since Trump began imposing economic tariffs, the global economic landscape has begun to change at a rapid pace. The trade wars initiated by the United States have forced leaders of different countries to reconsider their economic policies and initiate harsh measures to protect their markets. Elon Musk, known for his ambitious projects and his desire to change the world through technology, has found himself at the center of this global storm. Tesla, as one of the most important companies in the electric car market, began to suffer the consequences of these changes.
Outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. There are a lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK, where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
When Donald Trump decided to impose high tariffs on goods from China and Europe in 2018, it created a wave of retaliation around the world. Canada, fearing its industry with the consequences of possible economic losses, decided to impose tariffs on Tesla, which proved to be a powerful blow to the company's financial health. This event was the catalyst that accelerated the decline in Tesla's sales in Canada and led to a sharp decline in the stock. Musk, who had been a strong supporter of Trump's economic policies, became the target of criticism both in America and abroad. At this time, Tesla's stock began to perform consistently poorly. The company, which until recently was experiencing a golden time with rising sales and growing its market capitalization, was facing serious problems. The tariffs imposed by Canada primarily affected the cost of cars manufactured in the US, which reduced Tesla's competitiveness in the Canadian region. External markets began to look at the situation with apprehension, because if Canada decided to take such steps, perhaps other countries will follow suit. This worsening market situation led to a loss of investor confidence, which further aggravated the company. The long-awaited golden time for Tesla, when the company's stock was climbing to record highs, began to seem like an increasingly distant dream. This became especially evident when the stock began to plummet and investors started to withdraw funds from companies related to the electric car industry. In Canada, where Tesla had a fairly large market share, the number of new car buyers dropped significantly. Local media actively discussed how Trump's policies and Elon Musk's support of these policies led to political and economic friction that caused Canadians to stop buying electric cars. Economists began to wonder if the tariff policy would have a long-term impact on Tesla and its reputation and profitability in the future.
For example, here in the UK, sales year-on-year from January of this year to January of last year, down 12%. You can see Norway even worse, minus 40%, Netherlands minus 43%, Germany minus 60%, France even higher, the most actually, one of the biggest, minus 63%, and there we go, Spain even 75%. Germany, of course, comes to mind because Musk campaigned for the far-right AfD in elections last weekend, and they are now the second biggest second biggest party in Germany ever since World War II. But we did see over the past couple months, ever since President Trump was elected on November 5th, the share price of Tesla rocketing.
Protests against Musk and his ties to Trump also began to gain momentum. Canadians, who included a large percentage of those who have traditionally supported clean technology, began to actively resent his support for tough trade measures. As it turned out later, the protests went beyond simple civic actions, and rallies demanding a boycott of Tesla had already begun in several major Canadian cities. The relationship between Musk and his company began to succumb to serious challenges. Surprisingly, at a time when Musk seemed all-powerful and virtually unattainable, his policies and commitment to Trump's economy began to have the opposite effect. The very people who once believed in Tesla as a symbol of innovation and progress now began to question Musk's leadership. When it became apparent in 2020 that Tesla's sales in Canada and Europe were declining, Musk couldn't avoid answering those questions. He said that the US, being in a trade war, was interfering too much in the global market, making it difficult to develop international sales. However, his words have only started to cause an even bigger wave of criticism. After all, the decision to raise tariffs on Tesla was made not only for economic reasons, but also for political reasons. Musk, by supporting Trump, broke his image of an impartial entrepreneur and became part of the political struggle, which led to growing discontent among all those who previously saw him as a symbol of independence. But it's not just Canada that has become a problem market for Tesla. European countries, which were also experiencing the effects of trade wars and high inflation, began to impose new sanctions and tariffs, which only intensified the company's crisis. The decision by Germany, Europe's largest automaker, to tighten regulations on environmental standards had a particularly serious impact. Tesla was unable to respond to this increase in competitiveness, and soon the company was forced to reduce the prices of its cars to somehow preserve the sales market. This, of course, had a negative impact on the company's profits and financials.
Tesla shares have slumped by more than 9% amid a fall in sales in Europe. The electric vehicle maker posted lower sales across 5 European countries, including France and the UK. Joining us now to discuss this is CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio. Remy, why do we believe these sales are dropping? What's driving that?
Sure. Well, Errol, basically what Elon Musk has been talking about over the past, say, few months, ever since Donald Trump's election back to the White House, that has been fueling this anger, this frustration, some even say disgust towards Musk, and they're taking it out on Tesla. Tesla now feeling the pain. But because of what's happening here in Europe, Tesla sales fell by nearly half across the continent just last month, 45%.
Tesla's stock began to plummet. The 30% drop in stock price in a few months came as a shock to investors, especially those who had recently expected great success from the company. The situation with tariffs, protests, and falling sales became an unbearable burden for Musk. He began to reconsider his plans for Tesla and probably considered the possibility of withdrawing from political affairs. But the question remained, how hard would it be for the company to recover from such turmoil? The former Trump supporter became essentially a target for everyone from environmentalists to liberals, and his companies began to lose trust from investors. Now we're seeing those effects still reverberating through the markets. Tesla, which was supposed to be a major leader in electric cars, now faces bigger challenges than ever. While Musk claims that such shocks are only temporary, the situation with tariffs and protests has demonstrated that even the strongest companies can be susceptible to external threats. The question remains, how long can Musk endure such an economic crisis, and at what point will he decide to change his policies to keep his company afloat? The situation with Tesla has become increasingly alarming in recent months. The company, which was once considered the market leader in electric cars, is facing a real threat of losing its position in the global market. After tariffs imposed by Canada and other countries had a devastating effect on sales, it was obvious that the company was going through a rough patch. But if only that was the only factor that was jeopardizing Tesla's future. The company's sales have begun to decline not only because of economic measures and political decisions, but also because of serious internal problems that are making things even more difficult. One of the biggest challenges for Tesla has been the fierce competition from other major automakers. While Musk and his team have focused on maintaining leadership in innovative technology and building electric cars, other companies like Volkswagen and General Motors have begun to aggressively develop their own electric car lines, which are now serious competition to Tesla. In China, where Tesla has traditionally been strong, Chinese automakers have introduced new electric cars that not only cost less but are also customized to local conditions, which has greatly increased sales pressure. China became an important market for Tesla, but with increasing competition, the company began to lose market share, which was an extremely painful blow to its position.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
However, unlike its competitors, Tesla continued to work on developing its technology, including its autonomous driving system. This was the company's main chip that promised to revolutionize the market. Musk personally stated on multiple occasions that fully autonomous cars were the future and that Tesla would be the first company to realize this. However, as Musk's promises failed to materialize, doubts began to emerge as to whether the company was truly capable of succeeding in this area. Inexperience and the rush to implement new technologies led to serious accidents and scandals. The increasing number of accidents involving Tesla cars using the autonomous driving system has been the subject of many investigations. Several major incidents in Europe, including the tragic case of a family in Germany, where Tesla failed its Autopilot system, have generated a wave of criticism from both the media and regulators. Some countries began demanding stricter inspections of all Tesla vehicles equipped with Autopilot, which had a negative impact on the company's image. In response, Musk tried to calm the public by saying that the problems with Autopilot are being addressed and that safety on the road remains his top priority. However, many experts have begun to doubt the stated timeline. This became especially evident after Musk repeatedly postponed the date of the full-fledged launch of fully autonomous cars from the very beginning of the year, which affected the confidence of investors. At one time, the company promised that its cars would be fully autonomous by 2025, but as suitable technologies were not developed, the market began to lose interest in autopiloted cars. This has certainly had an impact on sales, and while Tesla used to be synonymous with high technology and innovation, it has become increasingly associated with a product that fails to live up to expectations. Competition in the automaker market, coupled with failed attempts to implement autonomous driving, has exacerbated the problems Tesla has faced in various markets. In Europe, where electric car prices and clean transportation tariffs have become an important factor for buyers, doubts about the value and quality of Tesla vehicles began to emerge. The company was having trouble meeting environmental and safety standards, which also made things much more difficult. Difficulties with production as well as supply chains, including trade wars and tariffs, led to delays in deliveries. Eventually, buyers began to favor more affordable and stable models from competitors over Tesla, which was experiencing supply disruptions and disrupted production schedules. This sparked a new wave of protests and discontent among consumers, as well as investors. Problems with sales and Autopilot also affected Musk's own reputation. On the political plane, his actions also began to raise questions. Despite all his efforts, Trump's support and interference in the company's affairs did not go unnoticed. More and more people began to realize that Musk, unlike his image before the election, was increasingly becoming a political figure. Protests against him and his companies intensified. And while Musk continued to respond to criticism with his usual sarcasm and optimism, he probably began to realize that acting in the political arena could cost him dearly as an entrepreneur. One of the most high-profile moments was when protests against his political stance were held in several US cities, with demonstrators openly stating that Musk was no longer the entrepreneur they once supported. Declining customer loyalty has also been a notable problem for Tesla. According to recent studies in states like California, where Tesla has traditionally been a leader, repeat purchases of the brand's vehicles have begun to drop. What's more, the research found that 32% of US shoppers now exclude Tesla from their list of preferred brands, which was a significant departure from previous data. This has also affected the company's reputation, with protests and public statements against Musk contributing to discontent among buyers. Unsurprisingly, amidst all of this, Tesla's stock continued to fall. It was a difficult moment for Musk. The company seemed to continue fighting for its place in the market, but external and internal factors continued to exert tremendous pressure. He was no longer just a successful businessman who creates breakthrough technologies. He was now a symbol of conflict that he hardly wanted to be associated with. His decisions and support for Trump's controversial policies have led to a drop in confidence, not only from consumers, but also from investors. With each passing day, the situation became more complicated. Musk found himself at the center of an economic and political whirlwind that threatened his company and image. Sales problems, competition, political involvement, loss of trust, all these factors began to undermine the credibility of Musk and his company. But despite all these challenges, he still hasn't given up. The only question is, will he be able to handle the crisis, or will Tesla, as the company on which he built his empire, be in danger of extinction? Time will tell, but Musk must now decide how to regain the trust of customers and investors, get Tesla back on track and lead the company out of the crisis. Amid the growing crisis surrounding Tesla and Elon Musk, the problems facing the company are becoming more and more global. While it was previously clear that the tariffs imposed by Canada were an important point in the chain of economic consequences for the company, now the situation seems even more complex. Not just limited to Canada, the entire global market, including Europe and China, is beginning to react to the economic sanctions and trade barriers that threaten not only Tesla, but the rest of the world's automakers as well. Musk finds himself at the center of a complex trade war, the consequences of which could overshadow even his ambitious projects on autonomous driving cars and space exploration. In such circumstances, the company must look for ways out of the crisis. First of all, it is worth considering how other countries reacted to Canada's decision and the imposition of high tariffs on Tesla. Europe, as one of the most important markets for American manufacturers, was not left behind. European automakers, including Volkswagen and BMW, have begun to aggressively ramp up their electric vehicle production capacity in an attempt to offset potential losses due to competitive pressure from Tesla. As early as 2024, Tesla was already facing increased competition in the old market, and European politicians began to raise concerns about the independence of the European auto industry in light of the growing influence of US companies. The European Union, in turn, had to introduce additional measures to offset the impact of tariffs imposed by Canada and the US. This was accomplished through a package of subsidies and tax incentives for local electric car manufacturers, which would significantly reduce car prices for European consumers. These measures caused Tesla to experience a drop in its market share in the EU, further aggravating the company's sales and financial results. The process of switching to electric cars in Europe accelerated significantly, but now Tesla was no longer the only player in this market, and competition with European brands became tougher. China, the second most important market for Tesla, was also not neglected during this period of economic instability. In response to growing tensions between the US and China, Chinese authorities have begun incentivizing local electric vehicle manufacturers by offering new subsidies and tax breaks for zero-emission car makers. Chinese car companies such as BYD and NIO have not only increased their sales in the domestic market, but have also started to aggressively pursue export markets. This led to a decline in Tesla's market share in China, and while the company continued to ramp up production, its competitors became stronger and more competitive. All of these external factors put pressure on Tesla, and Musk found himself in a difficult situation in 2024. His ambitious plans to expand production and introduce a new line of electric cars were supposed to compensate for the losses associated with political decisions, but it was not enough. Amidst the instability, Musk began to think about new approaches and possible measures to regain the confidence of investors and customers. Many rumors began to circulate that the company was looking for ways to cut costs and optimize production, as well as possible reallocation of resources to other projects, such as Neuralink and SpaceX, in order to get financial support. In the meantime, Musk and his team began looking for solutions within the company itself, trying to reduce the impact of external factors on its operations. In the first months of 2025, several new projects were launched to improve cost efficiency and reduce the cost of cars. First and foremost, Tesla began looking for ways to reduce the cost of its cars by implementing new technologies and improving manufacturing processes. These steps, while helpful in the short term, could not solve the company's problems in the long term when it came to regaining its position in the global market. In addition, Musk and his team began working more aggressively to create innovative models for other markets. In particular, the company launched a new project in India, where competition in the electric car market was not yet as high. This move was aimed at making up for losses in the US, Canada, and Europe. The Indian market, where demand for eco-friendly cars is increasingly growing, was an opportunity for Tesla to launch new endeavors. However, Musk also realized that further expansion into such markets would require significant investment and time to develop infrastructure, and it was not an easy issue to solve. While considering the opportunities to restore the company's position, one can't ignore the political situation that continued to affect its development. Although Musk tried to distance himself from political controversy, his involvement in the Trump administration still influenced the perception of him as a leader in the tech world. Questions about how important being neutral on politics is to business success were increasingly raised by experts and everyday consumers alike. In particular, protests related to Musk's political stance continued in the US, and his involvement in government projects caused increasing discontent among a part of society. On the other hand, his ties to Trump gave Musk unique perks and support for his technology projects, such as launching new satellites for Starlink. So how will Tesla move forward? Uncertainty in global politics, economic sanctions, and increasing competition all continue to be major challenges for the company. However, Musk, known for his determination and bold decisions, will likely continue to fight on. Perhaps a new approach to expanding into new markets and adopting innovative technologies will give the company a new chance to rebound. But one thing is clear, Tesla's future remains in question. Will Musk be able to put the company back on the path to growth and prosperity? Or will the influence of external factors and internal problems prove invincible for this ambitious entrepreneur? We will get the answer to this question in the coming years.